Brilliant. So as Sam said, my name's Claire. I'm the director and co-founder of a business called Better. We provide fundraising, leadership, strategy and communication support to charities and businesses with purpose. And it's really my great pleasure to come and meet with you today. We are all about at Better trying to find the way to help organisations either reconnect or be very clear about their vision, mission, values, and purpose, so they're able to deliver exceptional work for their beneficiaries. And we do that around a core value base of acting with integrity, being authentic, seeking creativity, being purposeful, and bringing the joy to what we do. If you want to find out more about us, there's a QR code there, and you can click through and have a look. But really looking at transformational organisational change and making sure organisations have the right culture to sustain income generation, particularly focusing on voluntary organisations like yourselves. For me, as well as working with Better, I've got 25 plus years experience of working as a fundraiser. I started, cut my teeth as a trust and grants fundraiser, not quite pre-internet, but not far off it, and have been a director of income generation. So during my time, I've raised funds through many different streams, but specifically for trust and grants, operational revenue income, lights on, bums on seats, money, as well as seeking substantial 6-7 figure foundation donations for capital appeals, which I've done at 2 organisations. I've also managed as a chief executive of a hospice, 2 hospices, statutory relationships with NHS and council funders. So that was for specifically commissioned specialist palliative care, but also I've worked in commissioned commercial agencies delivering care for people who wanted to receive domiciliary care in their homes. I have specialised in trusts and major donors, and for me, what is absolutely critical in that kind of relationship is forming the relationship. It's going towards that encounter with a funder of that type and doing it with the organisation's vision, mission, and values in your back pocket, so you know exactly who you're talking about and where you're going to, and doing that in an authentic way that brings your organisation and all the joy and challenge that comes with an organisation like yours, bringing all of that to life for a donor. And at the heart of that are the stories about what you do. Regardless of what your organisation does, you are going to have the most beautiful stories about funder and beneficiary engagement, you know, your founding stories and the things that really define you as organisations are going to be there. So for me, what I've seen through my career as a professional fundraiser are that success, which is driven by storytelling, outcome-led applications. Do you all have, just before we go into introductions, can you just raise your hand in real life or digitally, Sarah, if you can't turn your camera on? Do you all have mission, vision, and values as a charity as you stand at the moment, or a CIC?
Yes.
Beautiful. That is an amazing answer. Thank you. So before I get into the meat, what I would really like each of you to do is to tell us who you work for. The questions should be on screen. Whether you already apply for funding from charitable trusts, and whether you receive or are seeking statutory income. And whoever wants to go first can, please do. Go on, Sarah, I'm going to pick on you, only because you're not muted.
Yes, so I work for a charity called Be Me Project, based in Dorking in Surrey, and I've only been with them since last May. And also I'm brand new to fundraising, and my previous role was with a charity, but not as a fundraiser. So the whole thing is quite new to me, and I work part-time, so I don't feel like I've done many weeks as a fundraiser. So just so you know, I'm learning all the time.
That's awesome.
But yes, we are applying for funding from charitable trusts, and we've sent off quite a few applications over the last few weeks, actually, to trusts. And we are seeking statutory income funding, but we've noticed that it is pretty much seems non-existent at the moment, and we've struggled to get anything in that line. So we're sort of looking more to trusts and foundations than maybe previously.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
Francesca or Sandy, who would like to go next?
I'll go next, I don't mind.
Thanks, Sandy.
Okay, so I work for a charity called Merstham Community Facility Trust. We were established in 2006. We work from Merstham Hub, which is an area of high deprivation, in fact, the most deprived ward in Surrey. Our aim is to support, connect, and empower our community. So we will work with them to come up with ideas and then help them to bring projects to fruition. And we also do our own projects as well. So it's kind of a mix. We do apply for funding from charitable trusts, and last year we were awarded 565,000, which seems like a lot, but some of that was multi-year, so it's not quite as good as it sounds. But it isn't as easy this year. We know that things are tighter, and particularly core costs are an issue for us. So we do have some statutory income, but it's like little bits of, well, by statutory I mean from like councils. They're little bits. It's not like a decent chunk of money where we've got a plan for a period of time. And that makes it really difficult to function when you've got lots of pots of little money that does, like, for something for 6 months or for whatever it is. I mean, we had a British Sign Language course that was 10 weeks because the community said they wanted to learn sign language. So we managed to do like an introduction course, and we got some money from Surrey County Council for, but it was for 10 weeks. It's not, so then we have to go out and try and find more money. And so I would really like to do more with the statutory, so where we're a bit more partnership working with them. I'd like to kind of get some information from you about how maybe we can achieve that, because we don't seem to be able to do it at the moment. It's not something we've managed. And again, it's about how can we not have to do lots of little applications because they're so time consuming. You put almost as much into a small one as you do a big one. So how can we do better with our time in terms of applications, really? So that's kind of why I'm here today.
Can I just ask a question, Sandy? When you said core costs are a problem for you, can you just tell me what you mean by that? Do you mean you're not getting funded when you're seeking core cost?
Yes, I mean we put a contribution to costs into all of our bids. So I mean we do get contributions, but when you're getting £1,000, 8-10% of that is not a huge amount, and it doesn't go a long way when your rent is nearly 9,000, your rates are are high, and our service charges are almost as much as our rent. And by the time we've finished, we have a high core cost requirement, and it is challenging to find a funder who will specifically fund those core costs. And that's that would be ideal if we could find somebody that would do that for us. We don't do very much fundraising in terms of charitable fundraising stuff, mainly because we're in an area where income is an issue already. So I guess we don't want to put pressure on people to feel that they have to fund things for themselves when we know that some of them are struggling to eat. It's not really it's a challenge really. So we don't have any of the kind of large donor type people who are working with us. So I mean, we are looking at sponsorships, and we are working with local businesses to get some of our projects sponsored, but they'll only sponsor for a year and then we're back to square one again. So I'm sure it's not an uncommon issue, but it would be nice if we could do more, multi-year, more, and bigger, so we're doing less work in a way to generate the funding that we need.
Thanks, Sandy. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And then last but not least, Francesca.
So I'm Francesca, and I'm one of the co-founders of Roots for the Future, and we bring people together to get the most out of and improve their local green spaces. So that's either through community tree planting, or we run a community garden as well. And then more recently, we're doing a lot of wellbeing and nature stuff. So I'm a forest bathing guide, and I do a lot of mindfulness in nature. So some of that, the forest bathing, I do events that people can pay for, but what I'd really like us to become is an organisation that works with the NHS to provide green social prescriptions, which we're sort of right at the very beginning of we as a nation are right at the beginning of using nature as a prescription. Yes, we apply for money from charitable trusts, quite often, though it's indirect, so through the Community Foundation for Surrey. But yes, I've applied more directly to trusts as well. Do we have statutory income? We got a grant at the end of last year, which was for mindfulness in nature and forest bathing sessions for unpaid carers, and that was I guess originally it comes from the Health and Social Care Department, but it's disseminated at a local level by county councils. So we applied to Surrey County Council for that money, and so it's statutory. And then we've had smaller bits of money from more like smaller local authorities like town and parish councils, but that's very specific project-based stuff. And like similarly, core funding, we don't have huge outlays the way Sandy was talking about with rent and stuff like that, but we've obviously got vehicles and there's me. I mean, we're really small, so it's mostly me, but I do like to get in freelancers. But then saying that, I'm a freelancer. I bill Roots for the Future for the hours that I do. Yeah. Oh, actually, you just made me remember saying that we get money from Waverley, our borough council, for helping to run the community garden as well. But again, that's kind of billable hours rather than like core statutory income.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you everybody, and I really appreciate that. It just gives me a little bit of insight into where each of your organisations are, some of the challenges you're facing, and hopefully as we go through, it will enable us to kind of really focus on the areas that are most beneficial to you. What I've got now is just the agenda to go through. So we've done the introduction section. We're going to look at some of the stuff. I'll be as brief as I can with the stuff that you already know, but I wanted to be really clear about what we consider to be a trust and statutory funder. I'm going to just kind of helicopter up to look at the kind of UK external landscape, which is, I think, really relevant at a county level, and particularly Surrey. Then we're going to spend some time looking at what trusts really want to make sure that you're able to go and make your applications to trust the most impactful that it's possible to be, and looking again at statutory funders and what they really want from the relationship that they have with the voluntary sector. I'm going to do a recap at the end, including a couple of resources for trusts as well. And there is space for questions and answers at the end. But if there's anything as we're going through that you want to ask, please, raise your hand, interrupt me. There's very few of us. Just let us know, and we'll answer those as we go. Does that sound like a good approach to everybody?
Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. So first of all, just looking at what trusts and foundations are. So they're essentially the same thing. And a charitable trust is a legal arrangement where the trustees of that trust use the income that they have or the capital that they have from assets to fund charitable areas that they've identified and that they are then required to stick to. And I think that one of the things that when I first embarked on my fundraising career, what I didn't really think about was like, who are the people behind a trust and how important that is to understand when you're starting a or kind of trying to expand a trust fundraising pathway for your organization. Because you have quite a diverse mix of anything from, as I say in the bottom point, anything from lawyers at a law firm meeting once a year to act upon the wishes of somebody who's deceased and left an estate that is held in trust for charitable purposes, to a group of people who are meeting really formally as a family. The Ernest Kleinwort Charitable Trust is one that I've got a good relationship with. They're a family where the trust is passing down between father to his adult children, and they meet formally. There is a director of that trust, but there's very much a family background to it, and a sense of responsibility and a sense of real geographical interest and passion about the area that they support. It's a real passion for people. You then go down to another level where you have people just meeting around the kitchen table. They've either been brought on as a trustee and recruited to join the post, or they are part of the original founders of a charitable trust, who are wading through, there's no admin person to help them. They're wading through swathes of applications, and sometimes they'll divvy them out amongst themselves, or it'll be someone's job that year to be the person that wades through the applications. And that's the kind of person, as well as the grant formal administrator, that I want you to have in your heads when you're thinking about grants and trusts. How it feels to be that person wading through and what might be important for them as they start to consider what your organisation has sent in. And I'll come back to that. I think there are benefits to having a trust, and many families and organisations set up trusts for tax reasons, and the philanthropic element to that as a side issue is a benefit, and it's a great one, but they're doing it for tax reasons because they want to protect their overall assets. For many other people, it's purely philanthropic. The tax has got nothing to do with it. They just feel so passionately about a subject, and the range of subjects are so diverse as to be quite startling sometimes. And what they want, all of those different types of people, is to make an impact. They want to make a difference. For some people, that's a lasting legacy. So the people that will fund hundreds of thousands of pounds towards a capital build project, the driver for that is to make a legacy difference to the community that charitable trust serves. For others, knowing that they funded a service from a centre like yours, Sandy, where they're making a tangible difference to people who are facing real deprivation, they've been let down by our broader, wider society, who are hungry and, struggling to keep the lights on at home. They want to make a difference and a lasting impact to those people too. That diversity is important to keep in your mind, because as you go forward to write applications, you need to remember that you're writing to people. The trusts have a name. It feels like you're sending an envelope in to an organisation, a faceless organisation, and that you'll kind of get processed through a kind of sausage meat processor, and that's just not the case. There will be a process, but you're writing to people. Statutory funder, people as well. And in short, it's a government source of income. It can come direct from central government. It can be received regionally in the way that you've described, some of you, about this, the statutory funding that you receive from like Waverley, or, you know, is there a parish council in Merstham, Sandy? Yeah. The parish council and those small grants that they're able to give out. It could be NHS, real broad again and diverse range of funders. It's usually in the form of commission contracts or specific grants, things that you already know and experiencing. They will also potentially run bid programs for you to then go on to provide specified services or to run initiatives. And, you know, thinking about social prescribing, Francesca, that's a great example of one that GP surgeries often want to increase their arsenal of social prescribing to help support people who require support to get into nature, to fuel and benefit their treatment for depression, for example. You know, there's a wide range of benefits. So those statutory funders are really diverse, big organisations in the main, convoluted, very, very difficult, I think, for voluntary sector organisations to really get in front of decision makers unless you are a very, very, very large provider. So it's considering what you do in that. And I'll loop back to this in a little while, but I just wanted to make sure that we were coming from the same kind of starting point in terms of what statutory funders are and what charitable trusts are. So looking at the external landscape, which isn't great at the moment, and it really needs people like you out there who are kind of the fire in the belly of our society, kind of delivering projects that are fueled by passion and the desire for social change. 2024, as I've said there, was an incredibly tough year for charities. And I think that first point just sings out that almost the vast majority of charities saw a dramatic increase in demand for their services. And that speaks to the pressures on health and social care. It speaks to the pressure on the NHS. It speaks to people experiencing redundancy. It speaks to the kind of after effects of austerity. And we are still experiencing those after effects. Despite the changes at national government, it's going to be a long time before the country rights itself from that. The ongoing rise to our cost of living, us as people, each of us are experiencing dramatic increases in our costs, and that applies to organisations as well. And there is a real sense of uncertainty. So charities that are fortunate enough to carry their reserves and investments, the investment market is as bizarre as it's ever been in terms of what it's able to predict. But what is a fact is that in real terms, income is down. What your overall organisation's expenditure is in real terms will get you less. And that's an incredible challenge. And that is driving competition for funding. I promise I'm going to get more positive, so bear with me. There is an absolute drive for small and medium voluntary sector organisations to step up their fundraising, and that is drawing on limited funding. There is only one pot of charitable funding, that's there. That's not going to dramatically increase. However, what there are ways for you to be able to learn the language and style of accessing funds from those organisations to make sure that in that competitive environment, you have a much better chance of standing out. Quite a sobering fact is that 18% of charity leaders lack confidence that they're going to secure services and secure funding for services when they look 5 years hence. That's quite a big shift, an increase. And I think what that should tell you, as people from small organisations operating in a fundraising environment, is to be really, really smart strategically about what it is you're delivering and going to focus on, so that you are spending those precious resources you have on the things that give you the greatest impact. Because if there is going to be a challenge for funds as we emerge over the next few years, if that is going to become more of a difficult environment, if you're unclear about what is strategically the bread and butter for your organisation, the thing that makes the maximum difference to your beneficiaries and your users, if you're not clear about that, that's problematic. More than ever, people are raising money from trusts and foundations. The good news for this call is that a lot of people are doing that really badly, and doing that in a very scattergun way. I wish them only the best, and I wish them success. For you guys, I wish you the greatest space possible to expand your income. So, that there is more focus, everyone's seeking income, but not necessarily the focus on equipping the people seeking it with the skills to do the job. So learning what you can from sessions like this, and the rest of the Lasting Impact portfolio, as well as looking more widely amongst the providers for the charity sector, like Director of Social Change, then you will put yourself in a much, much stronger position. It's worth taking the time, which is very short in small organisations, thinking about you, Sarah, being part-time as well. It's worth taking the time to step back and understand what you need to be able to do these effectively before you leap in, because you'll be stronger for it. Does that make sense? That was looking at the charity sector. Looking at the statutory sector, 2025 is going to be incredibly tough. The NHS in Surrey went through a major overhaul in 2019, just before COVID, and were doing it again last year. NHS Sussex are doing it at the moment, and the amounts of savings across those sectors and the amount of money, and this is really relevant to you, even though it feels like it might not be, the amount of statutory funding tied up in the acute hospital settings. So the amount of statutory funding going towards things like East Surrey Hospital is massive compared to the statutory funding going to other voluntary sector providers. Thinking about you, Francesca, doing social prescribing. There is a huge effect of over a decade of austerity. We're talking about 40 million in-year savings for funders like the NHS. I don't know what the numbers are for councils, but I know that health and social care funding is a significant driver for them in terms of trying to achieve the best levels of support for their county. But in real terms, just like the cost of living is affecting us personally in our pockets, the amount of money available for statutory funders is reduced. And they're having to make incredibly difficult choices about where they spend that precious money. At the same time, more change is coming, because I think recent announcements from government, from national government, are that at the moment counties are deciding whether they devolve and change the structure of their councils to mayoral settings. So all the while, everyone's just trying to find the status quo so they can get on with the job in hand. These big changes are happening. And those big changes are relevant to you because the people that you will be contacting to seek statutory funding are directly affected. Their budgets are affected, the way that they work is affected, the process is affected. Some things are just put on hold and shelved. And again, as people seeking funding, the best thing that you can do is be conscious of that and have that at the front of your mind. Because if you can make your organisation's approach as easy and as simple as possible, and I'll come on to that later, the better. So I think trusts and foundations, and I'm a passionate fundraiser. Fundraising is one of the best things. I'm so glad that I pretty much stumbled into it back when I did. But trusts are amazing. And they are basically, as I said earlier, people who just want to do good. They want to see a lasting impact in society. And as a fundraiser, as somebody seeking funds from trusts, deep and really collaborative relationships are possible. I can't remember who said it, forgive me, but somebody talked about how you differentiate your time. I think it might have been you, Sandy, how you differentiate your time on smaller applications to larger ones and what that looks like. But working on developing relationships with grant funders is an incredibly useful activity because it enables you to understand their priorities, to understand the challenges they're facing, and in turn to pivot your organisation to be applicable to them. Building those collaborative relationships can lead to repeat giving. I think all of you, with the exception of you, Sarah, for very good reasons, because you're so new to this, all of you have mentioned repeat funding. And being able to secure that repeat funding, year on year money is the kind of nirvana for trusts. The guidance that they give you means that you can differentiate, and I'm going to come on to how to make that work for you later. But you can focus and you can target. It means that you have to research beforehand and you have to put the legwork in to spot the ones that are applicable to you, but it means that you don't waste time on the ones that don't. Giving donations from trusts enable you to maintain your independence. There's a whole debate that is not for here about what should be provided by the state and what should be provided by and for local communities. But what most charities want is to exist until they're no longer needed. That should be the purpose of any charity or social enterprise, to exist until you're no longer needed, and to be independent so that you can make the choices that are right for your beneficiaries along the way. And trusts enable you to do that in a way that statutory funders do not. And it's an amazing return on investment. The payoff with trusts and grants compared to the time that you spend and the investment that you have to make is a brilliant return on investment for charities, especially small and medium ones. So, you know, the more time you focus on them, the better. So going into what trusts really, really want to know and to hear about, and the things that will make your applications the most powerful. The first is to know that your organisation is operating safely, and the kind of things that I would like you to do after this session is to give this some thought before you kind of go back into the tumult of your day and your week, to really think about, can you evidence that your organisation operates safely? So what does safely mean? So do you have a reserves policy? Do you have financial policies in place about how you manage your bank accounts? Who can withdraw money? Who manages donations? Who you will and won't accept donations from? You know, sometimes in a hospice environment, for example, which is you know, part of my future, and large cancer charities, we wouldn't accept donations from the tobacco industry because of the causal nature of smoking and the very diseases that we were trying to eliminate. You need to be able to evidence that. And wider policies, for those of you that deal directly with beneficiaries, do you have safeguarding policies in place? Can you evidence them? Do you know how to whistleblow? Is there a process? Do you know how to make a complaint or handle a complaint that comes into your organisation? So for parish councils and those kinds of £500 gifts, that might not be so relevant. But as you start to escalate up the giving kind of ladder, those things become really important because they want to know that they're investing their money in organisations that are safe and safe for the beneficiaries and for the staff. So other important policies, have you got a health and safety policy? Yeah, can you demonstrate it? Do you have a risk register? Do you know what risks the organisation faces? You know, it can be back of an envelope stuff on a spreadsheet, mind. But But do you have those things so that you're able to honestly and authentically describe where your organisation is, what it does, and the challenges it faces? The next bit from there is they want to know that your organisation understands with utmost clarity the problem it's trying to solve. What is it your organisation is trying to do? So, just take a moment to think about your organisation. Are you able to articulate what you're there to do? What is the problem each of your organisations wants to solve through your existence? Because if that's in any way murky, in any way challenging or amorphous, what you're placing a barrier to accessing funds from a charitable trust, because they want to know that you know it. By you, I mean the organisation. They want to know what you're doing to solve that problem. So what is the approach that you take to dynamically solve the problems that you're facing? So an easy example, hospices are there to provide specialist care for people in the last year of life or at the end of life. And there are no spaces, not enough spaces in hospitals to provide palliative care and not enough professionals. What are we doing to solve that problem? What hospice is doing? They provide inpatient units and community care to provide care at home. Done, done. Very succinct. You need to be able to encapsulate that for your own organisation. And then you need to be able to evidence through data, through authentic stories and facts about your organisation that shows how you do it. Is that something, Sarah, I'm really interested in your response to somebody, as somebody who's very new to an organisation. Is that something that would be problematic for you to get your hands on, do you think? Or is that something that actually exists?
Yeah, no, it isn't problematic. The organisation, the charity was fundraising before I came along, and they do have a really good, well, it seems to me good, stock of stories and quotes and case studies, and also, all the sort of financial policies and safeguarding policies and things that I can access, and I know where to find them. Brilliant. So I've not had any difficulties, and I'm working alongside operations manager who's really good with all the budgets and the finances. So I work with her and she helps me with all the finance side of the application. So so far it's been all right, and I think that we do quite well in terms of data and stories. We probably could have more written case studies, definitely, but on the whole I'd say it's good.
And what about your organisation's purpose and what it's doing to solve that problem at a very big picture level? Is that something that you don't need to tell us, but do you feel confident that you can articulate that, or that you would be able to lay your hands on it and be able to describe it?
Yeah, I do actually. I think because
Brilliant.
we are quite single-minded in what we're doing, so we've not got a lot of different aspects of our work. It's sort of one major aspect, sort of helping young people with mental health through courses, and that's the focus of all my applications. And so it's quite easy to focus in on that and why that's needed and how we're addressing it. So
thank you very much, Sarah, and sorry to put you slightly on the spot like that, but I think it's I think when you're new in an organisation, it's amazing to understand you have the freshest take really on what you've got. And Francesca and Sandy, I would urge you to go away and just reflect on those points. Are you able to do the same for your organisations? I'm sure you can, but it's helpful to just stop and pause and think about that. This is a huge one. from a trust point of view. Have you read their eligibility criteria? If you have, and you're not eligible, and you apply anyway, that is incredibly challenging. If you think back to the people around the kitchen table managing swathes and swathes and swathes of applications that are coming through. And reputationally for your organisation, it presents a massive challenge. And trusts know each other. There is a circuit. There is a learning environment. There is communication between a lot of trusts. So it can be reputation damaging if you apply for trusts for whom you have no eligibility and kind of do a punt anyway. So they want to know that you've researched them and read their guidelines. So ask yourself, and I've put it here, so for later when you read through these notes, do you meet it? Do you really? Because when you really want the money to come in, it's very easy to suddenly start thinking, oh, if I just did that or talked in that way, maybe I could circumnavigate it. But then when you add in the competition for trust that exists and the damage potentially to your reputation, I would encourage you to take a step back. In reading the criteria, do you know how they like to be approached? If they say absolutely no phone calls, never phone them. Sounds so silly, but people do. If they say we welcome phone calls, leap on it. Even if you're short on time, prioritize making that call, because so many won't. But you will put yourself higher up the list by having an informed and friendly conversation with a trust if they say they welcome calls. Take note of how long the application should be. So often they will say, they will give you, I'll never forget, I was applying for a £1 million grant, and I had 200 words to describe what difference the gift would make. I was like, oh, how am I going to do that in 200 words? And it took me a heck of a long time to kind of really get to the point. And that's what it drives you to do, is get to the point. But if they say 200 words, 500 words, one piece of paper, don't do 300 words, 700 words, 4 bits of paper. You really have to listen to this stuff, because it's almost demonstrating to them that you respect the way that their trust works, and you're making things as simple for them as possible. Do some planning. Put time aside at least every quarter, every 6 weeks, ideally, to look at your trust portfolio to see if there are any new ones, and map out when they meet, when decisions are made, when deadlines for applications are made. And that's quite straightforward, but really important, because if your organization's leaders, and Francesca, I guess you're the leader and the doer in this scenario, but if they're saying, oh, we need a trust application to go out because we need £700 to pay for this thing that's going to come out in we need the money for 3 months' time, but every trust has got a 6-month kind of roadmap to actually from application to delivery of funds. It's just not feasible to do, and it enables you to manage upwards and to set reasonable expectations on when you need to know as a fundraiser about the information that people or the plans that people have got in your organization. And so you continually review that. And again, I've got a handy tool to share with you later to make that a little bit easier. If you can, invite charitable trusts to come and visit your service, to meet your frontline people, if it's appropriate with your beneficiaries. Sarah, I could see why it wouldn't be for yours, because you've got children and young people there. If it's possible for them to see services in action, amazing, because it deepens that emotional connection to the cause that you've got, And anything that you can do to deepen an emotional connection to your cause. Trusts can feel unemotional, but they're not. You're evoking feelings in the writing that you're doing. It starts to build that relationship, build a passion for your project, and enables you to ask for more money later. Just as an example of that, I received many years ago now, about 10 years ago, I received restricted funding. So restricted funding is funding that you receive for a specific thing. It must only be spent in that way and is different to unrestricted or core costs, which are lights on, bums on seats. You can make decisions how you're going to spend it. So I'd received some restricted funding for a project that was in the final stages of pilot, and we were hoping to run the project with a staff member within our organisation full time. And we received £30,000 towards the ongoing recruitment of a staff member for the project to run full time. But in the final months of the final month or so of the pilot, we discovered some really important changes to the NHS, which would have meant that our service would not have worked in the way that we'd invoked. It had worked all this time and was delivering great stuff. All the data pointed to this being really, really worthwhile. But the NHS changed and it wasn't viable. But we had this £30,000 restricted pot. Because I had spoken to that trust many times, I'd invited them in, but they'd never wanted to come. But the invitations had been sent and the updates about what they were doing had been sent. Because of that, I was able to have a conversation with them about the challenges that we'd experienced, what we were doing as a result, what our kind of risk management was to looking at that pilot project and the people that were supported from it and the external landscape. And I managed to, because of that relationship and only because of that relationship, transfer that £30,000 restricted to £30,000 core. Really, it was really impactful for us, and it was one of the few times I've been able to do that, but it was because of the relationship and because I respected how they ran and I knew their guidelines inside and out, and I'd taken advantage of the fact, in a nice way, I'd taken advantage of the fact they were like, talk to us, call me. Does that make sense? We talked about word count already, but in your application, every time you see an acronym or jargon about your charity or the sector in which you work, don't do it. Cut it out. Visualize me giving you a hand slap whenever there's a jargon or a piece of jargon or acronym in your application. These people are often lay people. They may have never, ever, ever worked in the sector that you are in. And anything that you do that adds complexity to an application where it's not needed, just rule it out straight away because it's not necessary and unhelpful for you. Read your application. They want the application to be as simple as possible. And I've put there that simple doesn't mean easy, because no application is easy, but keep it simple. So explain in plain language, get to the point, don't prevaricate for too long. Really think about the audience that you're writing to. And even if you are writing out to, and this does happen, you can get for low level, 200, 300, 400, 500 pound trusts, you can get people doing mail merge applications. You will stand yourself in greater stead if you take each application and do something to tailor it. So even for those low level ones, do something to tailor the application, because you will be head and shoulders above many other charities of the same size as yours who are not doing that. And they want to know that you respect their charity, that you respect their trust, and you respect their time. You're all from organisations where you are working directly with beneficiaries, and that's amazing. And it means that you're able to evoke the passion. I'm thinking about you, Francesca, as a founder, that you're able to evoke beautifully the passion and sense of purpose and drive you know, real drive for changing things for the better for the people that you serve. So use that and reflect the community roots of where your charity is based. So talk about the area in which you work. Don't discount that, because it really helps when you're looking geographically. If you're approaching a national trust, you can still talk about the grassroots nature of what you do. You know, they might not know Merstham from Mitcham, but actually they want to know the difference and the very, very, very tangible things that are happening on the ground where you provide services. Talked about stories already, but I'm going to keep coming back to it. So use case studies, brief or longer, depending on the application. Can be a sentence, it can be a picture included in your application, if that's okay with the trust, as well as impact data. Get it there on time, meet their deadlines, and make sure it's readable. So there's the jargon aspect and making sure that a layperson could access what you're doing, but make sure it is eminently readable. So you know, if you're able to do a free form application, think about font size, think about you know, think about legibility, and make it enjoyable for them. You know, you've got people I've put there because it's relevant. You know, people are doing this after they've been to work all day, after they've, you know, cared for their parents or their kids or their animals, you know, and they're tired and they're having to then do this other thing which they're passionate about. Let's make it as easy as possible. They also want to know what your plans are beyond their funding. So what would happen if you didn't get this money from them? Because if the answer is we would go bust if we didn't get this £1,000, that's a real challenge, because for them, they'll say, well, okay, well, that £1,000 is going to last X amount of months, days, whatever it might be. And then what? So you'll go bust. So my investment has come to naught. I'm not fulfilling my charitable trustee duties of protecting the investments of this organisation and spending them wisely. So you don't need to go into huge detail, particularly with smaller trusts, but know that you need to know what would happen if you didn't get this money. And you can talk about, I've applied, you know, I've got 7 applications out at the moment. I've had 4 back and 3 have granted X amount of money. And so you paint a picture of success, if that is true. But it will, again, stand you head and shoulders above the competition at the moment if you're able to demonstrate that. That makes sense?
Yeah.
I'm going to move over that slide, so I'm conscious of time. A piece of work really important for your organisation is to think about outcomes of the work. So we've talked about the problem you're trying to solve and what you're doing to try and solve it, but being able to demonstrate the impact, social impact or outcomes of the work that's happening, being able to do that again will stand you in enormous stead. So because we ran this service on British Sign Language at our centre, it enabled access to work for 3 individuals in the Merstham area. Is an example of a positive outcome, somebody getting back into work. If you don't already, you need to know from your organisation, how do you decide what you change and what you keep the same? How do you evolve? And how are you looking at how you would expand on the things that work really well and have the biggest impact? How would you use those to get greater reach, and what do you need to be able to do that? Collaboration and partnership for trusts is really important, and that will come back again when we talk about statutory funders. But can you show that you pool resources, or have got experience of working with similar organisations, and have used that in a way that increases your impact? And really importantly, can you show real tangible involvement from the people who use your services to show that they shape your services? If you don't, I think, especially for medium to larger trusts, for all of us, it's going to become really important that we're able to say why we don't do that. And that's very much to do with the very necessary shift that trusts are making at the moment. Again, medium to large trusts, away from a doing unto others style, or doing to kind of patriarchal approach to deciding that you're going to run a project because you think it's the right thing for a group of beneficiaries. For organisations working in international development, that becomes even more important because of the requirement to show how you are working as a charity outside of a colonial mindset. It's a huge piece of work for the charity sector at the moment. If you can't demonstrate how the people that you work with, the people that you provide services for, if you can't demonstrate how they're involved beyond the co-creation of services, you want to know that they are involved in shaping how they run as well. Why not? Why might that be? Is it that, in this year we're in startup mode and there are 2 members of staff and we're doing pilot projects and we hope to involve users in co-production in year 3? Think about how you can demonstrate that. Co-production and co-production of services shows that you are really and truly reflecting the realities of the people that you serve. And being able to show that means that trusts will be confident in investing in your organisation because you're showing that connection there. Does anybody? Oh, go on.
Can I ask a question about that? Because this is something that we try and we struggle with, because I'll give you like a small example why. So say for example I apply for some funding, and it's working with, well, I'll use the example that I have, which is like working with unpaid carers, and we want to improve their well-being, so that they can continue to care for their loved ones. So I applied for the money from Surrey County Council, but I didn't go beforehand to a group of carers and say, is this the sort of thing that you would get involved with? If not, why not? Or, is this the sort of thing that you'd like to do and you can't, like, tell me why not? And had I done that, there would have been things that I would have learned that I could then like tailor the application. But if I go to a group of carers and say, this is what I'm trying to do, and then I don't get the funding, then I've engaged a group of people in a process that then is that then doesn't happen, if you see what I mean, because I don't have the funding. So it's a really tricky one for me, because I definitely want to tailor everything so that we have the most impact, but I don't also want there to be a sense of expectation, and then there might not be any money for me to carry it out.
So I think that kind of in response to that, I think that's about managing expectations, which you've just said. It is about being really upfront with those beneficiaries and saying, I really want to just sound you out. I'm going to try and access funding. If I can access it, we would go for it. If we can't, I'm going to have to rest it and then come back to it if a funding opportunity presents itself. But to enable me to make the right judgments, I really need to understand from you and people like you, is this the right thing to do? But I think being honest with those beneficiaries and explaining the situation, I think they would 100% get it. And it is about not making promises. It isn't about setting expectations that you then can't meet later. It's about framing those expectations so that nobody's disappointed, but they've had a chance to articulate the things that are important to them, and they're being heard. And you know, being given in a situation as a carer where you don't have much agency, you know, you're just, you know, dealing with what is in front of you day to day and just trying to survive. You know, to have something where you do have some agency and where you do have some ability to contribute and you're being asked for your insight and expertise is really valuable. So I would urge you to do it, kind of despite that, but manage those expectations up front.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a courageous thing to do, because you are dealing with people who are really challenged, you know, dealing with challenging situations. But you know, I think it's about that adult to adult conversation about, this is what I'm trying to do and this is what it means. Any more questions before I move on?
I think we have an issue with this as well, because the people that we work with are very young people who have got, you know, significant sort of mental health, self-esteem issues. And so we don't, you know, we're not really consulting them. We're more working with schools and pastoral teams in schools who then identify pupils that would benefit from one of our courses. And then we take them through the course. And at the end, well, at the beginning and the end, they do a sort of impact questionnaire, which helps us measure the impact of the course on them, but they're not really engaged in shaping or, you know, developing our services. So this is a one that we struggle with in terms of the applications. We don't really have much to say about involvement from the people who use our services, other than the schools themselves, but they're not really the beneficiaries. They're just
No, they're not.
coordinating.
I mean, my response would be, and again, it's not, we don't have space for a kind of debate on it in this session, but my response would be, why not? You know, and why don't we have those kind of, why doesn't Be Me have that kind of engagement? Because surely the user understands, you know, best what it is that they benefit from. They might not know necessarily. None of us sometimes know what we need, particularly if we're struggling with mental health, but I would say, why not? What is the barrier? And you know, your organization should look to overcome that barrier, because you could be carrying on with a service that isn't necessarily meeting the needs of the people that are receiving it.
I mean, I think the reason why not is because they are often so low in their moods, or struggling with confidence, that they might not even really be able to articulate how or why they're feeling what they're feeling. And the idea is that, you know, we've seen amazing changes in their attitudes and their confidence by the end of the courses, but certainly at the beginning, you know, it's difficult to engage them even in the course material sometimes, because they're struggling with confidence and self-esteem, things like that. So they're not, you know, it's not, you can't just sort of interview them and say, well, how can we do,
no, yeah,
better, or, you know, it's not, they wouldn't be able to articulate even what they are needing or feeling some of the time. So
yeah, and it's obviously at the right time, isn't it? It's at the right time in the relationship with any user. You know, right place, right time, right method for that group. But I do think, if for any organisation to look at funding, you need to be getting some kind of stakeholder or user engagement to make sure your services are hitting the mark, really. Moving us on, I'm conscious of time. So critical to any type of fundraising is making people feel appreciated. If you don't have a very, very simple like journey of what you're going to do with people who give you money, kind of go away and sketch something out. So, you know, it doesn't matter what type of donor it is, whether they're a small business, a large business, a trust, somebody who's given you an individual gift, they need to feel thanked and they need to feel special for the gift that they're giving you. So does your organisation have an approach to recognition? You know, if it's a you know, a £200,000 grant, you know, do you do a plaque? Do you do a thank you letter? Does the chief exec do a thank you letter? Does your, you know, lead volunteer? Does a beneficiary? You know, how do you you know, or is it that you just do thank you letters because you absolutely should? And what is the plan for updating trusts on the contribution that they've made and the difference that it's making? What you're trying to do through that is a show that there is appreciation for the gift and that there is a tangible difference because of what they've done, but also you're just trying to build that relationship into being a partnership. And the more that you make people feel appreciated and the more you engage them in the difference that they're making, the more they're going to feel like a partner in the relationship and not just somebody kind of doling out cash to people. So appreciation is a massive part of a trust fundraiser's role. And it can be very easy to kind of forget that, but it's really, really important to ongoing funding. So they want the things that I've described here, just to kind of recap. So honesty, authenticity, connection with your cause. They want that cause to come alive. They want personal touches. They want to see a signature. They want to feel that you've taken the time to write to them and that it's important that they respond to you. They want to understand their contribution and how it's made something better or improved. And they want to have those guidelines and criteria respected because of the shortness of time that they have. So kind of helping yourself in that situation is, we've talked about stories and talked about outcomes, but really focus on getting outcome-based stories, because that's going to really support your applications. Be clear about the policies and procedures that you need to have in place if they're not there, and talk to your trustees about what, you know, depending on what your management or leadership structure is, about getting those in place from a good governance point of view. And also, you know, a question which is, do you need to work with your trustees to help them understand that trusts aren't a quick win? They're a very, very long-term income generation method, and they will not provide you with a short-term win if you've had a good idea or need suddenly an item or you know, a capital item. And invest time in research and only focus on those you're eligible. So take time to look at the relevant websites that list grant funders, and I've got some lists a bit later, and do that research and plan out applications so that you are able to, as well as kind of saying, hang on a minute, this is a long-term, medium to long-term process, but look, here is how I can help you, and is the kind of timeline for applications. There's a brilliant resource called Visual Ping. So you might be waiting for a local trust to say when applications are open, and amidst all the things that you're doing as an organisation, you're having to remember to go back to their website and check to see if the applications have gone live or whatever it might be. You can set up alerts for funder websites, and you can put in a little box the website and the wording that you're looking for. So like applications open or whatever it might be, and then it sends you an email. So it stops you wasting time having to make these little tracks back, and really would highly recommend that. Tread with caution here, because you are human organisations delivering human services to humans. But use AI, test AI to deliver for you a small trust application, and look what that looks like, and then is it good enough? Correct it, add some tone of voice for your organisation. But as you try to build up your income portfolio, use it for small applications if it works, because it will save time for you having to write. But you must use personalization. You must check and fact check what it's coming out with, because AI can hallucinate and just make up facts. But just, if you can, save time on those small applications. Remember, and you will get a lot of no's, often before you'll get a yes. But be tenacious and have persistence, because those no's aren't because your project isn't worthwhile or that your organisation isn't good. It's just that they're balancing many asks. So be tenacious through those no's, because when you get a yes, it means the world. And just remember that dialogue. And then you'll get this in the documentation, in the resources from this, but there's just 2 sites there where you can search for grant funders that might be relevant for your organisation. And just one that I didn't, they're not necessarily a grant finder, but the Directory of Social Change is excellent as a resource for finding out how you might tailor trust applications, and also access other training around grants. They're really very excellent. And there are manuals, grant manuals, you can get them online, where you can kind of search as well, and Directory of Social Change will lead you to those. Statutory funders, like you, they are trying to do the best they possibly can in incredibly difficult economic and social circumstances. And I think if you've got an existing statutory relationship that will sometimes feel a little gnarly, sometimes feel a little bit frustrating, particularly when you're talking about, small pots, and it would just make the world of difference if you could just give us one unrestricted pot and we'd spend it and it'd be great. Just remember to demonstrate that you recognise where they are coming from. That it's got to be a 2-way partnership relationship here. For any reporting that you have to do, and you may not, but if you do, report on time and report with insight from the work that you've carried out. Make their life as easy as possible, because there will be many organisations that don't make statutory funders' lives easy, who are dismissive of the relationship or challenging in the relationship, or don't commit resource to doing what they say they're going to do. If you can do that, that would be enormously helpful, I think. And remember that it is a relationship, so communicate. So if you've got somebody that you are reporting to, they may not be a budget holder, but if you can form a relationship where you just send them a little update about some work that's happened, because just a little anecdote about a service that you ran and this happened, and it's because of that relationship, that will really help. They want demonstrably well-run services. So going back to co-creation, this is going to become even more important as time goes on. It's going to be the thing, and co-production, it's going to be the thing that singles you out as organisations to invest precious statutory funds in or not. They want you to be able to demonstrate insight into the impact that you make and be able to articulate that insight. They want to fund organisations whose services deliver the scope that the statutory funder has set out and hasn't strayed from the scope and hasn't got scope creep. They want it to be well defined. And really, the most importantly, because their funds are so tight, and the possibility of getting statutory funding is reducing all the time, they want to find and fund the projects that support the greatest number of people. And underpinning that is value for money. They want to see evidence that you're collaborating. If you've got another charity that's running exactly the same service, articulate why you're not doing that together. Show that you are working to amplify services, amplify reach, and shout about that, rather than just kind of blinkering that somebody else isn't really doing that. We're the best one and we're the only one. They need it to be without ego at the moment, because they're making these tough choices. And they want those services as part of that value for money proposition. They want the services to be delivered. They want open communication when things go wrong. So leaning back into that well-run organisation bit. They want to know when something's gone wrong. They want to know why it's gone wrong and what you're doing about it, and actually what you've learned that might be sending the service into a different direction. They want to be part of that process. How can you help yourself? You need to be really clear about offer and impact, and how you differentiate yourself from others that offer services that are similar to yours if you don't work in partnership. So shout about the differences. Co-design we've talked about. User involvement we've talked about. User involvement's a horrible word. Have you got the people that benefit from your services? Are you talking to them and working with them in a way that means those services reflect their experience? And can you demonstrate that you have or are or attempting to do meaningful partnership working? What partners do you have? Explore that. Think about the world they're working in. You should approach the relationship like a partnership. Sometimes that might be really difficult if you're dealing with multiple people and not one person, but be really responsive, but also be mindful of your charity's time, but be responsive. To you, the thing that you deliver is the most important thing that there ever was. And that's brilliant. That passion is what keeps social action happening. But for statutory funders, there are many, many, many organisations. So I've said here, fight for your place at the table, fight for your voice, but leave ego behind. Because in this relationship, bringing ego into budget conversations without being backed up by impact will leave you poorer. Set up bid trackers so that you can spot when opportunities are arising, and understand from your trustees where your income, so where and with your trustees and for your trustees, where your income is coming from, and have the conversations now about what independence means for your charity and what it might mean for diversifying income sources or looking at services that you run. So, you know, is statutory funding the right thing for your organisation? Does it impinge on your independence and your ability to make choices and decisions about what you do? It's worth considering. So just to go back and just remind ourselves and recap a little bit about some of the things we talked about. What trusts really want, that you've looked at the criteria, that you're connecting with them appropriately, that you're keeping it simple, that you know the problem that you're trying to solve and how you're going to do it, that you have got insight into the impact that you're making and the outcomes that you've created, and that you're demonstrating it with authentic stories, short, medium, long, pictorial, whatever it is. Use them because it brings your charity to life, and they want to be appreciated. They don't want people to be subserviently, showing subservient gratitude, but they want to feel appreciated, that their time and their gift has been worthwhile. Statutory funders want that evidence of well-run services. They want meaningful user involvement, communication. They want data and insight. They want value for money. They want evidence of collaboration and partnership and timely reporting to make their life as easy as possible. That is a whistle stop here, but we've just got a little bit of time for some questions or discussion, questions you want to ask each other as well as me, but please do take advantage of it.
Just, I mean, I would just say to other people, one of the things that I did when we got a grant and we finished it, and they didn't ask for a report, but I did send one anyway, a final report with this is what your money did for Merstham, and it was the first time anybody had ever done it. So it is worth doing, you know, even if you don't ask for something at the end, I would say it's worth sending something through.
It's so
because
meaningful.
it was meaningful for them, and they were really kind of, you know, taken aback that they'd actually got something at the end of it they weren't expecting and they'd never had. So I think it is worth, that's a really valuable thing. I would, you know, I would say if you're thinking about doing anything, that's probably something that's really valuable to do.
Thanks, Sandy. Yeah, that's stewardship. The stewardship of those relationships is precious, and it's a precious thing.
One of the problems that we have with we're working in a community hub, so we're constantly dealing with people, and we signpost a lot. We do, you know, we have people who come in who are challenging to deal with, who cause difficulties with other people. We deal with all of that, but there isn't a way that we can really measure that. We can't ask people for them to give us a story afterwards, because quite often they either want to forget that they've done something, and you know, so it's very hard to demonstrate all the additional value that we are adding to. I mean, it's not just about the projects, it's the day-to-day value that we add, that we're having a bit of a, you know, it's how do we really demonstrate that?
I think there's a mixture of, there are going to be some things that you can't quantify or qualify with data, you know, stats, numbers. Do you have volunteers who you know?
Yeah, we have 60 volunteers, so
amazing.
Yeah.
You know, using volunteer stories to demonstrate that kind of example of impact is a
Yeah, I mean,
really
the volunteers, I'm thinking about separate to that. I'm thinking about people who just walk in off the street, come in, have a meltdown. We signpost them and then they go. We probably won't see them again until they're ready to have another meltdown. It's
No,
it's
of
that kind of
course.
thing. We're diverting people quite often away from GPs, from, you know, because we're able to signpost them to other places and other charities, and it just feels like we don't get any recognition for that work.
Do you keep a note of how many people you signpost, Sandy?
No, I mean, maybe that's one of the things we need to do. It's just, you know, it's just hard because it's ongoing all the, you know, you're doing it all the time without even really recognizing it yourself.
Yeah, you could put a book. You could put a book if you've got like a reception desk or something. You know, signpost, tick. Who did you signpost to? Tick. You know, and then you know, count up, make it as simple as possible. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, but that would be, and in terms of the volunteers, I think what I meant was not necessarily, but if you've got volunteers that are managing those situations and doing that signposting, you know,
well, we do. Yeah, we do. We have 20. We also have 20 wellbeing champions, and we have our reception staff are trained. They're not staff; they're volunteers as well. So they do a lot too.
And there might be a way that you could do some kind of very, very like rough and ready online survey of stakeholders. So if there's a practice manager at your GP, you know, the GP surgeries for Merstham, you know, here's what we're signposting to. Is there a way that we can work together to look at impact of what we're doing there and just ask the questions?
Okay.
Sarah or Francesca, any questions from you?
I was wondering about if an organisation, if a trust has asked for a report, you do your report back. Should you send a thank you letter as well, or yeah, you should.
Yeah,
Shouldn't just say we really appreciate the difference you've made, blah blah blah, in the report. You should actually write okay.
yeah, absolutely. Unless they say don't, and some do say do not waste your resources. I would go, you know, even as simple as just get some thank you cards, you know, some cheapy ones off Amazon, and handwrite thank you cards to them. They love it. They love it.
And with the community foundation So they sort of keep you as an organisation kind of at arm's length from the trust and foundation. What would your tips be there in terms of, like, so there's been some times that we've had a grant and they've said, oh, this is a family trust and they really want to be involved because they really like the location, and then you say, yes, brilliant, they come here and see this, and then like with this one project it just never materialized, they never actually showed up. I think there was a health issue, so it was fair enough. I wasn't going to take it personally, but do you have any tips there about how you can make it a bit more personal, without kind of infringing on that very deliberate, like the way the foundation is keeping you away from the trust?
And you don't have the trust contact details.
Well, I mean, quite often I don't even know who they are.
Yeah. One way is to, if the community foundation will allow it, is to send a thank you note via them and include your contact details in the thank you note and say, please call if the Surrey Community Foundation are happy to do that. But another way is to do well, actually, if you can't find their details, you can't find their details. That's a bit of a dead end. But I guess you could look at Grant Finder and see if there are any identifying factors there. But it's how supportive Surrey Community Foundation are generally to you. You want to maintain that relationship as well. And if a trust is saying, I want to use the Surrey Community Foundation to help me manage my giving, you need to, not you, Francesca, but an organisation needs to respect that because they've doing it in a particular way. But sending thank you notes via the foundation would be a way to try and bridge that gap.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, I know it's not a magic answer, but
no, it's fine.
Okay, so I think we've reached the end of our time together. Sarah, have you got any questions at all? Or you're on mute, Sarah. It's our first on mute moment.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, just I'm slightly confused as to, so some funders, the big sort of famous ones like Henry Smith and Children in Need and those ones, they seem to want huge amount of work, for a grant in terms of pages and data and finances and everything. And then you get some trusts which also seem to be giving out quite significant amounts of money, but all they say is just send us a letter, apply anytime in writing. And it's hard to know how the two are reconciled. How, are these trusts that say anytime in writing really giving out what they say they give out? So, the big pots of funding, are they really giving that out to people that write like us, sending a letter with our annual report or whatever? Or is it just that they're giving out very small amounts and reserving those big amounts for the ones that they've already got relationships with? Do you see what I mean?
I do see what you mean. I mean, obviously I can't speak for them, but from experience of receiving funding from them, it goes back to that point I made at the beginning. They're so personal. So, you might have a very large chat, like Henry Smith's a great example. It's a very, they've got systems and processes, they've got, teams that look after it, and you've got trusts that have the same volume of income, but it's kitchen table stuff. And that is the beauty of trusts, a little bit, that absolute diversity, and why why as a fundraiser raising money from trusts you have to personalize and spend time on it, because there isn't that diversity is real and does exist. The brilliant thing about the charity where they like send us a letter is that you can shape that relationship and you can do things that create collaboration. With organizations like Henry Smith, it's much harder to do that because they're very, very process driven, systemic types of givers, brilliant givers, but you're not going to end up in having a coffee on a regular basis with the director of Henry Smith in the same way that you might from another trust that says, like, write us a letter.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So don't discount it. It's not. Yeah. Another good tip I've just thought about is checking the Charity Commission website. You can, because they're a charity, you can look at foundations and trusts on the Charity Commission website, search them up and have a look. And you can have a look at their charitable purpose. You can look at their accounts and where they've given money. And you can also look at competitors' charities' websites and statements of accounts on Charity Commission website and see where they've got funding from too. And that's often a good source of insight and intelligence.
I'd love to know which trusts are just looking for a letter, because we don't seem to have any of those.
Yeah, that'll be your research, Sandy, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Maybe the three of you could form a support group,
Yeah.
searching them out.
Yeah. Every time I do an application, it always seems to be like, unless it's for a very small amount, it just seems to be for like a mega piece of work.
Well, listen, thank you so much, each of you, for your contribution. I wish you all the very, very best.